It's just that there was a technical difficulty the other day with Carl. Like, he knocked over a coffee again, and obviously it went onto the wires. There was smoke everywhere, and we still haven't cleared the whole bloody place out.
Everything is always Carl's fault.
Of course it is.
Let's get good. Welcome back to GFW Academy. This is Edit Creation 103. We are going to be doing Logic today. As always, I am joined by my broadcast partner, Goth.
Hey guys, how's it going?
So we're going to hop right into the game now. I did notice that we missed one move when we did the moveset last time, so we're going to go ahead and set that real quick. We left this figure 4 leg lock in here. While it's not a terrible move for us to leave on there, I would rather see people use a hold like that as a signature, considering its lineage. So what we're going to do is probably just throw another Boston crab on there, or maybe a half crab even. Yeah, I mean, a half crab would give it a little more variety.
Yeah, half crab's good.
Okay, so we'll throw a half crab on there, and then the moveset is done. And we're going to jump straight into Logic. This, by far, guys, is my favorite thing about Fire Pro. If you're building edits on Fire Pro, this is the thing that makes it different from every other game out there. And if it's done right, it's the thing that makes the matches phenomenally fun to watch. By the way, we did check the Logic on Kendo, and Goth did a great job.
Yeah, I did, didn't I?
He did. It was a priority chain that screwed him at the blackout. But we'll get into priority chains a little bit later on down this tutorial. We do have another Logic tutorial on the channel, but that one is an older one that I did when I first started playing the game, and I understood the percentages, but I didn't understand the game engine as well. So we are going to try to be a little bit quicker with this one because I do want to get into priorities as well today, but also try to take the other one with a bit of a grain of salt and focus more on this one if you happen to have caught it. Okay, so we'll start off here in stand back stall, and one of the first things I like to do is just kind of bottom out everything except for the thing I know I'm going to put the most points into. And in this case, the most points are probably going to go into our initiate grapple, which is going to be relatively the same for pretty much any professional wrestler. Now, on the other hand, if you are building an MMA style edit, you might see a lot more striking than you do grappling. That's not what we're doing, though. Obviously, we're doing professional wrestlers, so we're going to go up to 60% on both of these just to start out with. If you want, you can always go down to like 50% in the small slot and 60 in the higher, because people do tend to grapple more as the match goes on. That being said, it's important to note the way these damage categories work. Because we're only seeing small damage and large damage here, it means that small damage is actually the percentages that will be used during the small and medium damage phases, and large damage is the percentages that will be used in both the large and critical damage phases. Now, to explain the way that those damage phases work and what makes them different, small damage means that your opponent will theoretically auto-counter anything that isn't a small move. Medium damage means that your opponent will theoretically counter automatically anything that isn't a smaller medium move. Large does the same thing for large, medium, and small. And crit is important because when you hit crit damage range, any pinfall or submission should finish the match. And that's very, very important. The two things that we want to keep in mind while we're doing Logic the entire time are, one, distinct separation of the different parts of the match as far as what moves are used and the feeling that you get from the wrestler, and two, watch the stuff in critical, because the way that botch finishes happen is by stuff being in critical, also in priorities, as we discovered with Kendo. Sorry, Goth.
You're really fucking rubbing that in, aren't you?
No, I'm trying to caution people. I'm trying to caution people because it's a real thing. So what I like to do for small damage is I leave stand back stall at 0, and the main reason for that is that when a match starts, it's kind of uncommon for people to just kind of sit back and stay away from each other. Like, that's not how that works. They usually tie up, they move in and they start striking, they close in on each other. One thing we do see a lot when matches start, though, is two people circling each other to get a feel. So that's what we're going to set to 10% here. For our punch, this is going to be the majority of our percentage, but what I'm really going to do here is look at all of our strikes left and go, do I think I want to see a lariat at the start of the match? The answer to that is no, I don't. So what I'm going to do is say, okay, I have 40% here, so I'll put 20% into punches and 20% into kicks. And what that's actually going to do is basically just make it so that As you can see here, half the time they'll grapple, the rest of the time they'll either punch, kick, or circle, which is great. That's perfect for an opening to the match. Now, when we get to medium, or rather large and critical damage here, I do expect to see a little bit more standing back, because people are going to back up and try to catch their breath. They're not going to be circling opponents as much. They're sort of already in it, you know? So we'll put that at 10 there. And that, for me, just makes it easy, because you just kind of swap them here.
Yeah.
So what we have percentage left here is 30%. You'll notice that's less than we had on this side. That's pretty standard. What we're going to do with that 30% though is where it gets different. We're going to select what attacks out of here we expect to be able to hit from a standing position without them being groggy. That's a very important thing, because some of these, like the enziguri, if we set this as a percentage that's reasonable when they're not groggy, 9 times out of 10 they're going to whiff it. And that's fine if that's what you're going for. Like if you want them to always whiff a certain attack, except for the rare time they hit it, go for that, that's fine. But do be mindful that whiffs cost breath, which means the edit will tire out faster, and they also essentially cause suicide damage depending on the move. So not necessarily a great thing to have. What we are going to do though is, since we have 30% left and we're basically going to want punch, kick, and lariat attack in non-groggy slots, we're just going to do 10 in each. Nice and simple. We're just dividing that up. So 60% of the time our guy is going to grapple. The other 30%, well, 10% he's going to stand back and breathe. And the other 30% he's going to go for one of these strikes. We're leaving enziguri and front dropkick at 0 here, because those are going to go in the groggy area. And you'll see that when we get there. So now we move on to initiate grapple. Once again, you'll notice that there's a damage category missing here. We have a small, we have a medium, we have a large. We do not have a critical. What that means is whatever percentages you use for large are your percentages for critical. So, for example, this power bomb that has a pin attached to it can finish matches based on the percentages given, which is why we're going to give it a low one when we get there. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut everything that's not small in the small slot down to 0. And then we're going to make some decisions about... I don't use front headlock really at all. As a positional thing, I put it in the last slot at maybe 5 to 10%, but otherwise I really just don't use it. The one thing we start off with here, in my opinion, is the hammer throw. You can go anywhere from 20 to 40% pretty safely in the early going. The higher you go with the hammer throw, the more of a fast-paced match that edit is going to put on. So if you have a high flyer or a luchador, this should probably be at 40%. Since Phoenix is kind of a roughneck big man that can fly but is not a high flyer, I'm probably going to put him at about 30%. So it'll be fast-paced but not quite as fast as our luchadors. Once we do that, we can look at these. I'm just going to put these down to 10 real quick so that we can see how much we actually have left. So we have 30% left. Within that 30%, we want to do a couple of things. We want to even it out amongst these moves up here so that we see a variety of them. But at the same time, we also want to come down here and put 3% in a couple of our medium grapples, because there is an ukemi system in the game, and the way that works is your opponent allows a grapple to happen. And that can sometimes happen at every damage range, so you put a couple of teaser moves in there just on the off chance that your guy actually lands them. And if not, they get countered and it creates back and forth action in the matchup. So on my last video, I had people setting this to about, I think it was 10%, but in this case, we're going to bring that down to about 6. So let's go with, we have a double side body knee lift because this was supposed to be a toe kick B, but we can switch that around later. So we'll keep that in mind. We're using this small slot as a toe kick B, and we can switch it later. For this right here, I think what I want is a 3% chance to go for that bigger sledgehammer, which is kind of cool because if you're trying to tease moves for the medium part of the match, if you have something like the hammer blow to sledgehammer where it's a slightly graduated version of the same move, that's a great thing to use as a teaser. Anyways, because it doesn't just come off as a teaser, it sometimes comes off as like your guy is alternating the attack they're using, which makes the match more interesting in my opinion. So we'll take our elbow smash here to 3%. Nah. We'll take our side body knee lift here to 3%. Since this is going to be a toe kick B later, that actually works out fine. And the reason I'm doing that is because in the early match, that will keep them standing. The sledgehammer will down them, but the side body knee lift will not. So that'll keep our pacing sort of even. By that point, we have 3 moves that down and 3 moves that do not that are possible in our small slot, which is good. So we get to medium damage. We may see a decrease in the amount of hammer throw we're using here. We may not. It really depends on how our percentages work out. I'm just going to zero everything out real quick because it makes it a lot easier to do this. In my opinion at least, because we know how much percentage we're working with. I'm going to start at 30, and then if we need to, we can cut that grapple or the hammer throw down. So you're going to want 3 to 5, or I guess it's more like 3 to 7% for your small grapples once you hit the medium range. I'm going to set them to about 5%, because that's generally where I start, and then I go for about 10% in each of our mediums. There is one catch here. If you have anything that pins in your smaller medium slots, you want to set those to about 15% here. And the reason why is because if you have a pin in those slots, you do want to see it in the match, but you don't want to see it when we get to this range. The large damage range is the worst place for us to see those, right? So what we might actually do here is we'll use the power bomb as one of our 3% teasers, because that does have a pinfall attached to it. And we will not use the dangerous DDT. Using finishers and SIGs here isn't generally a good idea. I mean, it can be. It really depends on the move, but in this case, the dangerous DDT is not something we want to see come out in the middle of the match. We have 3% left, and we haven't done our second tease, so that's why we have 3% left. See how that worked out kind of perfectly, though? We got 5s all the way through 11s, and then another 3%. And I'm going to put that on short elbow B, which is the 3 elbow combo that leaves people groggy, because that's just a nice little move for us to set up with. So once we get to large critical, which is what this is, because once again, we don't see the critical damage range, things get a little bit more interesting. For example, we're probably not going to want to see the hammer blow here at all. We're going to leave that at 0 because the sledgehammer is just a graduated version of that. We are going to want to see the dangerous DDT. The hammer throw could stay at 30 probably. The dangerous DDT, along with anything that pins, we're going to see 3% of the time. May seem a little low, but here's the deal. We don't want to see the dangerous DDT 4 times a match. We want to see it once, and we want to see it either win or get a near fall, which is why we set it to a low percentage. Same with that power bomb. We don't really want to win with that, but we do kind of want to see it like once a match. So 3 to 6% is sort of a sweet spot for things you want to see once per match. Then we're going to come down here to our basic stuff. We're going to go with about 2% on everything except for our hammer blow here for obvious reasons, because like I said, we're going to pull that out. We're going to want to go 5 to 7 for our medium grapples. I'm going to start at 5, and then we can bring them up as we need to. And then for our big grapples, if we want to see it multiple times in a match, we're going to go for 9. If we want to see it slightly less, we go for 7. If we want to see it once or so, we go 4 to 6. And those are just numbers based on the way we're laying this out that kind of work out that way. If you do your percentages differently, it might not work the same exact way. So we're going to go for 9% on the short elbow B, because that's something we can see repeated a couple times. We'll go for 7 on our jumping brainbuster, because that's something we can see repeated, but we don't want to see it repeated a bunch. Same with our Asudagari buster here, or the original STO rather. Or actually, this is just the STO. The original STO is the other variant that Evil Miss has. So we have 15% left right now. And with that, we can come in and maybe bring these up to 7, which is a good idea, so we see them a little bit more. We could bring these up to 3 if we wanted to, but I think instead I'm going to go ahead and push some of our repeat big grapples up a little bit higher. I think 9% is okay on these. If we're going 7 here, the reality is the difference between these is so slim that we're still not necessarily going to see these get spammed, which is what we're trying to avoid. The best logic you can get as a setup is no spam. Within reason. There are some things that we want to see spammed. Oh, wait. What category doesn't have 100%? Oh, this one. Whoops. Okay, so we have 14% here left to distribute. I'm just going to start by taking these up to 15 and see where that leaves us. That's usually the way that I do this. I kind of rough it and then figure out where we're at. We have 4 left, so that's a pretty easy split then. We're just going to go 16 on each of these. Yeah. It seems weird maybe to have an even split on these. When I first started doing Logic, one of the mistakes that I was making was I didn't do even splits on these. I focused on specific moves that I wanted to see during that part of the match, and that can work with the right edit. But the reality is it also leads to move spamming, and it's not always very functional. So it's kind of better, in my opinion, to keep things relatively even. Okay, so now we move on to Circle Opponent. The first thing I want you to notice here is that once again, we only have small and large damage, which means the small section isn't just small, it's small and medium. Anytime we end up with small and medium, we kind of have a little bit of a problem. And the reason we have a problem there is because while you may be comfortable seeing this command elbow during the medium part of the match, do you really want him to open with that? Not really. And that's why these small damage, large damage ones are like my least favorite, but there are ways to work around that. Having a high hammer throw from the back is totally acceptable. We could honestly set this to about 50% early on and be okay. What we're going to do here with the rest of our percentage, though, is we're going to go about 40% here. You could also do 30-20 or like 35-15, but in this case, I'm going to do 40 and 10. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do 35 and 10, and the reason I'm going to do 35 and 10 is because I really want that schoolboy to be hit during that phase. In fact, I want the schoolboy to be hit during that phase so badly that I'm going to bring that down to 30% and that back up to 10, and I may go even lower than that, being realistic. I might take the command elbow here down to 5, take this down to 25, and put that schoolboy at 20% so that we actually see it quite a bit in the early running of the match, but not when it's going to win the match. Because we don't want him to necessarily win by that schoolboy. So when we get to this large and critical one, 3%. That's where that schoolboy lives, 3%. Realistically, though, because there's higher percentages in general because there's less moves in back, you can actually kind of go up higher. You could go 10 if you wanted to. I think I'm actually just going to leave that at 5, though. And then we'll obviously still want to see the next smash, but we'll see it a lot less. So maybe we go 15 there. Let's do maybe 25 here on the command elbow because we should start to see that more at this phase. And then we'll do 25 here. And what we're going to see is how we can balance these. So then we only end up with 5 in our full Nelson Buster, which isn't quite what we want. We want things to be a little more even. So we'll take that up to 10. This is sort of what I do. You can also do the math in advance. You can just balance it out and do the math in advance and be fine. But I prefer to... I'm going to actually take this to 10 and then make all 3 of those bigger ones 20. We are still neglecting our sleeper hold there by doing it this way. I'm not sure how we want to correct that, though. I mean, I guess we could take 5 from like each of these, but if we do that... we're not quite going to end up even anyway. Oh, yeah, we will. I'm just bad. That'll work. So once again, we're trying to stay even on this stuff, and it's going to function different than the early match, because the early match, pretty much all you're going to see is the neck smash or a schoolboy, and then once we hit that late part of the match, you're going to see command elbows, you're going to see sleeper holds coming out, leg lift backdrops, full Nelson busters. The back is going to be very, very different when we hit that phase of the match. Irish Whip is another one of these small-large, which this one, to me, is by far the biggest travesty to make small-large. Making the Irish Whip small-large is just painful because it's such an effective tool for match pacing for high flyers. So one thing not to neglect, if you have something in this counter slot where it says duck and dodge for Phoenix right here, that is determined by your style, by the way. You're going to want to set that to a reasonable percentage. This is leapfrogging, this is ducking under them while they're Irish whipping. I kind of always put at least 20% here, and I think 20% here makes sense for Phoenix as well. And then I'm going to split the rest of it, which is 80%, right down the middle between our elbow butt here and our lariat. I'm actually not going to put any in flying body attack. I would love to have that in our medium range, but we don't really have a medium range here. Oh, yeah. Actually... because the flying body attack is a pin, I'm going to retcon what I just said. Welcome to the episode where I tell you things and then I go back on them. Part of that, though, like I said, is that we do want to make sure we use those pin moves earlier in the match. 20% still seems like a lot to me, though. I think I'll maybe take it down to 10 and then give each of these 5. It's unfortunate that we have to do things this way because we don't have that medium damage range. I would much rather have the medium damage range and be able to do our flying body attacks then. But this is the way the logic works. So when we get to large here, we're probably going to have slightly less in duck and dodge, maybe even none depending on the edit, because as wrestlers get more tired, they tend to do that less. And that's really what I want you thinking about when you're doing your logic. Think about what you would see in an actual match flow. Like, that's the focus, is what would we actually see in a match flow? So we're going to go 10% on the elbow butt here, maybe 15 on the flying body attack, and then another 15 to 20 on the flying lariat here. I believe the flying lariat is a signature for us, so seeing that at about 20 isn't a terrible idea. And then we'll see if we can echo that down here. Once again, it's mainly just about having that balance. We just really want a nice balance. And look at that. It balances perfectly at those percentages. So that's exactly what we want.
Although, to add on to a point you made earlier as well, like depending on how you want to style your edits, it also can depend on the style of excuse me, wrestling that you particularly like as well.
That so is
with
like,
go ahead. Good edits, I imagine that yours is more King's Road style, slow build into a climactic finish, essentially.
Somewhat. I would say if I had to peg the style that we kind of went with for GFW, I would say that it's kind of like a hybrid between King's Road and Strong style.
Probably, yeah.
Like, we're not quite as slow as King's Road style, but we're also not quite as fast as Strong style. Which is fine. So here's another great example. We talked about this when we picked this front kick. Because we have small and large damage ranges, we're going to set the front kick to 0 right here. Pretty much the only thing we're going to do when they get in the corner during the beginning and middle of the match is the corner hammer blows here. Once we get towards the end, we get to have a lot more fun. We're going to see less of the corner hammer blow and more of the turnbuckle bomb and the guillotine whip, which makes this really easy percentage-wise because we're going to set our front kick up here to 50% of the time. So 50% of the time when they're in the corner, he'll go for that big front kick. The rest of the time, he's going to go for either a turnbuckle bomb, guillotine whip, or on a much lower percentage, this hammer blow. Hammer blow doesn't disappear entirely, but it does become something we see a lot less. Okay, so now we're on opponent down near corner. This is one that I see a lot of people have trouble with. I had a lot of trouble with this when I first started. So what we're going to do is set our don't ascend here pretty high. It's going to seem really high. 80% sounds like a lot. But the thing you have to consider is that unless your guy is a real big high flyer, you really never want this to go below 60. Because once you go below 60, the chance that your wrestler is going to fly off the top rope is equal to the chance that they're going to do anything else in the match, which seems a little extreme from any consideration. Like, it's equal to the combined chance that they will either stomp, pick the person up, bounce off the ropes, you name it. Go ahead, Goth. You had something?
No, I was just agreeing with you, that was all.
Oh, okay. Cool. That's right. No, just kidding. So we're gonna...
Hey, you don't own a company anymore, so you can't talk to me like that anymore.
Oh, really? No, I'm just kidding. So you'll notice here that we only have large damage and opponent condition critical. What that means is that large damage is small, medium, and large, which is another one of those great job lumping the damages together in a way that we don't really love. Here we get to opponent in critical condition. This is when the match is going to end if you hit the move. Still gonna go... Actually, you know what? Here I'll maybe go about 70%. And we might still see the appeal diving elbow. Actually, no, we're not. We're not going to see that at all because there's a pin tied to it. So we will actually leave that at 80%. And we'll go 20% into our finish here. So that means when they're down in the corner specifically, that's the thing you have to understand about the percentages too, is they're not necessarily accurate to what you see. Like, we're setting this 80-20 here, but that doesn't mean when our opponent is down 20% of the time we'll hit the Senton Atomico. That means that when our opponent is down in the exact area that the game registers as near the corner and none of our ground logic has triggered, this happens. So that's something to keep in mind. That's why we have 20% here for this finish, because that's actually realistic. Okay. So now we're going to look at our opponent down near the center. This is a really great one if you have corner to center stuff. We don't on Phoenix, but I will talk about the percentages there just to explain a little bit how those should work. We've already established that Phoenix isn't really a luchador as much as he's a big man that can fly, so we're going to set our don't run here very, very high. We're going to maybe see that layout style sunset flip 10% of the time when they're down in the center. And once we get to critical, that will change quite a bit. we can potentially go much higher with it, but I think what we'll do is we'll just double it. When they're in critical, there's twice as much of a chance that we'll see that grounded sunset flip, which is basically a grounded swanton bomb. Because we don't have corner to center, we're not using it. If you do use corner to center and it is a finish or a signature, give it a considerable amount of percentage. Even consider something as high as 50% in critical condition. And the reason why is because the opponent down near center is one of the rarest triggers you will find in most matches. It's such a rare trigger that 80% corner to center is really more like 20%, if that makes sense. Okay, opponent down, face up. Let's get rid of that right from the get-go. I mean, I guess 10 is okay, but I'm not super fond of... 10 is okay. 10 is okay. Beware of your pickup opponents. One of the things I did a lot when I was first doing this is I would like make these really, really high. And in the beginning of the match, it doesn't even make sense. Like, I'm actually going to put this down to 0. I'll probably give him about 20 here in large damage. And in critical damage, when they're basically done... that's when picking up makes a lot of sense. That's when we see guys pick up a lot. So we're going to go for 80% there. And then we'll go through and do the rest of these. This should be relatively easy. There's some simple, fast rules here. They do vary based on whether the character is a babyface or a heel. For a babyface, having 5 to 10% in your pinfalls in the small slot and 15 to 20 in your medium slot is a great idea. For the heels, you want to see the pinfalls a little bit less. They don't really pin as rapidly as babyfaces do, and that's usually because heels are trying to lay in damage and they're more aggressive. Given the fact that we already have 5% in both of our pinfalls here, all we have to do is split the difference on our mediums. So what we're going to do is go 45 here and then 45 in the other slot. 45, bam, done. Or whoops, wrong. No, that's not the wrong slot. Okay, that works. Yeah. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave that bow crab right there. I didn't realize that was in a medium slot. Doesn't matter, though. We do have this knee drop here. That's probably a little bit... actually, no. The leg drop's probably a little more appropriate. Either way, you want to split it between 2 striky moves here. I don't really like subs that early on for a non-technical wrestler. For a technical wrestler... like a headlock here, or even an arm lock, or something basic like that is fine. But for Phoenix, he's not a very technical guy. We don't really want to see those subs come out until they're a little more damaged and he has more time to sort of work the hold. So when we get to large here, we're going to have more time to work the hold like we were just talking about. So what we're probably going to do is go with about 15 in our things that were prominent before. And then a little bit higher in these other ones, so 20, it looks like, is going to be available. However, that is not correct, because I forgot to up our pinfalls, and that's the first thing we want to do with a face. So that'll get those about even. We may end up able to just about even them out. No. So what we're going to do instead is that. There we go. So, still, once again, sort of balancing that. We want to start to see the medium moves a little bit faster, or I mean a little bit more frequently here. And when I say medium moves, I mean the stuff that we prefer to see him do at sort of the mid-range of the match. Once again, though, notice that our damage has changed. So small damage is small, medium, large is large, and crit is crit. So when I say medium, in this case, I'm really talking about large, which is confusing, and I'm very sorry for that. But... if you play around with this enough, you'll start to understand what's what and really get comfortable with it. So we have about 20% left to work here, and we could just even that out 5% across the board. But I think what we'll probably do, since we'll be later in the match about to finish, is we'll use that 20% just to raise up the stuff that we saw sort of become more prominent in the large damage, and we'll start to stop seeing these more basic strikes. And we're... notice here, 0% in our moonsault fall and our back hook leg pin. We do not want to end the match off of a random pinfall, because what happens if you set these to like 5, 10, anything? What invariably happens is your guy like counters a back grapple with an elbow and then covers with a moonsault fall and gets the win, and it's the worst finish you could ever imagine. You're just like, why did I do this? So we're avoiding that. That's the goal. We don't want that to happen. Okay, to face down, we're going to honestly do this about the same way. Like face down and face, whatever, reset it. Face down and face up should look relatively similar. They may vary a little bit more on like technical wrestlers and stuff like that, where you're going to have a little more variety in these moves. But for Phoenix here, like, his moves are relatively the same, face up or face down. He doesn't really have that much going in a submission game, so we don't need to worry about that as much. I'm going to immediately put 15 in here, though, so I don't give you guys the wrong percentages while we're doing these. I generally do the pinfalls first, just so that I don't forget to raise those percentages. Okay, so for this one, we're going to get exactly what I wanted before, which is we can just do 45% in both of our mediums. The last one, I basically put stuff in the wrong slots and then logicked around it. That's not necessarily the best approach, but it is an approach. This is me defending my mistakes in the last tutorial. Thanks, Goth. That was your time to chime in and say something funny, so I sound less like an idiot, but it's cool.
Well, you just did it yourself, so, you know, I don't really need to say anything funny.
Okay, so we have a leg drop and a Boston Crab that we're going to put our 10s in for that one. Once again, this is one of my least favorite damage mixes, actually, is when they just meld 3 of them into one with this large slot, but it is what it is. This is opponent dazed near corner. Now, the opponent dazed near the corner is much... With the high-flying ones, the most important thing to pay attention to is whether the opponent is dazed or whether the opponent is down. Because one of the errors that I see people make a lot when they're first making edits is when the opponent is down, they set like a standing dive, or rather a dive to a standing opponent, and those will miss 100% of the time. And that's not what we want. So what I might do here, just because it's funny and it could potentially work, is I could set him to crash and burn off of this diving elbow. But it'll also just look weird, because he'll attempt to hit an opponent on the ground who is clearly standing. So now that I think about that, maybe we won't do that. That just seems silly, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously for the animation of the move, it would look silly, but obviously, you know, you've had wrestlers in the past that use elbows to down standing opponents. Case in point is, used to be known as Dean Ambrose. He used to deliver a elbow drop to a standing opponent, but obviously he's John Moxley now.
Yeah, he is.
We're giving you prime updates on real wrestling at the moment.
Yeah, because, you know, that's not everywhere on the internet right now. However,
we gotta be topical.
Very much like we did with our opponent down near the corner, you'll notice that we basically just move our chance to go to the top percentage from our more basic high-flying move to our more damaging high-flying move. So our diving elbow attack in this case. I really like that diving elbow attack we took, by the way, because to me, like, that's the move where if he misses that, it's going to be so crash and burn and look so good, because he'll just land on his face. It'll be like a botch diving headbutt. We haven't seen, you know, a million of those either. But they're always good. They're always good. Okay, so here we have opponent dazed near the center. This is a good opportunity to hit running finishes if you have them. We don't in this case. Once again, we're given 3 damage categories and then critical. So what I'm going to do here is set this to about 80%. We'll set this real high at about 15. Although, actually, I guess we kind of want... Maybe we'll go 70 here and then do 15 here, because we really do want to see that flying body attack quite a bit early on so that we can see the pin attempt fail, but still happen. And then for this higher damage range, what we'll do is we'll go maybe 80% and go 5 here, 15 there. And the reason for that is because once we get to that critical condition, we really want to see that signature flying lariat come out, and what we'll probably do is we'll priority chain a pinfall to that flying lariat so that if he hits that signature spot, he will cover afterwards, and that'll work out potentially. I'm not sure. With that flying lariat, we may actually not cover after it. We may decide to chain a taunt to it, because that's not necessarily something that I want to end the match. Okay, opponent days. This one is fun. This one is by far my favorite one to do the logic on. Because this is where we get to use all of those standing strikes that we didn't use before because they would botch or whiff a lot. It also is one of the best ones to priority chain Taunt into move off of, but that's something we can't really do here. That's something that comes later, but you'll see that when we get down to the Taunt section. So one thing I do want to point out here, when an opponent is groggy in professional wrestling, yes, people attack from the front, but 9 times out of 10, that is the best opportunity to get behind them. So I like to set the percentage of back grapple here pretty high, a lot higher than our front grapple, because it just makes sense to me. In this small damage slot, we'll probably mainly want to see the lariat here. Although we could potentially split damage a little bit between the enziguri as well. Yeah, let's... This is where we make choices about how we want to see things. So I'm going to actually put this at about 40%. I'm going to raise this up to about 40%, maybe take that to 20, and that's going to finish us off right there. The important thing is we're still going to back grapple a lot more than we front grapple, and we're going to see that lariat attack quite a bit. Now, the reason I did that is because we do get a chance to build a little more pacing here if we save some of these other moves for later in the match, and that's essentially what we're doing. Here, we're going to go probably about 10 or 15. It does seem weird to go down on front grapple, so maybe we'll leave that at 20. And we'll at least put 40 here, but I'd probably go a little bit higher at this point. So maybe we'll do 25 and 50 there, which leaves us about 25% to spread amongst these 3. So I'm going to go about 5% there. Maybe 15 here. I suck at math. Just so you all know, I suck at math there. That's better. 5, 10, and 10 works out just fine. This means we're going to see him grapple a lot more once we start to get into that large range. Then we're going to see him sort of go for these standing strikes. That's okay. He's not really a striker. If you do have a striker edit, though, these numbers will be a lot lower up here, and these should be a lot higher. Once we reach critical condition, we're basically going to go for front grapples, back grapples, and at a much lower percentage, these guys. In fact, we probably won't see the lariat attack at all here. We'll see the enziguri and the front drop kick maybe about 5% of the time, and then the rest will go into this. If we have about 90 there, then let's take this to 30, and then this to 60. And that's pretty reasonable for a wrestler like Phoenix that isn't primarily a striker. And now we're down to the MMA stuff. I move through this and ignore it. Realistically, you can set this to whatever you want, and you can tweak it if you want. But because our roster doesn't use MMA positioning, it doesn't matter for us.
I just normally just even out and like split it into thirds, all of those. It's normally what I've done.
Well, there you go. That is Goth's way of doing it. I would go with that because I can't tell you anything about these. I really don't mess with them at all. The one thing I do sometimes do with these, if I'm really concerned about it, but only if I'm really concerned, is I look for any pinfalls or submissions and set them to 0 because I just don't want that to happen. That being said, because we use the rest holds mod that makes every sub that isn't a signature unable to finish the match, I don't really have to worry about subs in there at all. Okay, Ukemi. This is a very, very fun one to talk about and to explain. This is the likelihood of a wrestler purposely taking a hit. It's more important than that. The way that Ukemi works, realistically, is it allows your wrestler to take a hit in order to build more spirit, which allows them to make comebacks later in the match when they take a pinfall that should finish them and stuff like that. So realistically, faces should have a lot of Ukemi early on. Heels, not as much. That being said, they've started us off here with 45, 50, 60%. You're going to want to keep about a 60% spread. This 20, 25, 15 is pretty common amongst people, but because we're a face and we like to take that damage, we could always go like this and shift it that way, or we could even shift this down to 10 so he doesn't do it as much at the... Oh, no, not 100. Not 100. It is worth noting that if you set the Ukemi at small damage to 100, it's not necessarily going to work the way you think it will. I did that for one of our coaches so I could test moves out and record them on him. And what ended up happening is every time I did that, he would basically take a bunch of moves and then kick the crap out of the other edit because of all the spirit he had built up. Okay. So that's pretty good right there. We're still at our 60%. We're just a little heavier on the front end, which is good because we want Phoenix to take that damage. Okay. Opponent at back. So here's where we get into something very interesting. If you have dirty moves in your counters at all, set them really low. Set them like 10%. And the reason I say that is I want you to think about a wrestling match. Just any wrestling match. Even with a dirty heel in there, how often do you see a back kick low blow in a match? Goth? How many times do you think in a standard match with a heel you would see a low blow?
With today's wrestling, quite a lot, actually.
But I mean, define quite a lot, because even quite a lot isn't quite a lot if you really think about it.
It depends on like a lot of things, the length of the match, the pacing of the match, and stuff like that. But I suppose max you might see it 3 times in a match.
See, and that's my point. 3 times in a match might seem quite a lot compared to like territory days, but 3 times in a match is not 20%. 3 times in a match is like 10, 5%. Here we're okay. We got an elbow butt 80% of the time and then a Russian leg sweep 20% of the time. I'm fine with that. But if you do have a low blow there, maybe set it to 5-10%, because you don't want to see it 6 times in a match, because at that point it just starts to lose impact, and then it starts feeling weird, honestly. Okay, opponent outside the ring. This is a big one. Do nothing should rarely ever be above 10%, unless you've got somebody that's just lazy. Like if that's their entire gimmick is they just don't care and they don't care about winning the match, set their do nothing higher. But realistically, most people are going to either leave the ring, they're going to go for that slingshot, or they're going to go for that dive. I honestly would rather see Phoenix dive more than straight up leave the ring. So we're going to go ahead and add some percentages to our dives here. And I'd rather see the tope con giro more than the plancha. So now we've got a pretty good percentage chance that if they end up outside, he's going to go for it. Now, we can also set these post moves when they're outside. I tend to not do that because I find that it's a way better opportunity as far as building spots in a match goes to see these slingshots or these dives to the outside. You can do a really low percentage. Maybe we will. Maybe we will. I'm feeling generous. So maybe we'll put 10% into this Senton Atomico just because seeing him hit the Flight of the Phoenix to the outside is actually within the realm of things I've done with him in the past. His very first match, he went for the Flight of the Phoenix to the outside and landed on a shopping cart. Way to win. Okay, so here we have taunts. This is a very, very interesting category, and the reason why is because the way this works is before anything happens. Like, all of these calculations you have to understand is a 100-sided dice being rolled, right? But this one, performance, takes place before any other rolls. All these other rolls, they sort of fall down based on the order they are on the list. Performance isn't like that. If you set opponent dazed to taunt 100% of the times right here, then every time the opponent is dazed, they will spam that taunt until the opponent is no longer dazed. So be very careful with that. You never want to do 100. If you're on PC and you use wake-up taunts, your wake-up taunt is going to be performance 1. You're probably not going to want to set any percentage to it at all in here, because if you do, it'll accidentally get people up off the ground, and you're probably going to want to save that performance 1 taunt just to get them up to set up for finishes, which is the whole point of having a wake-up taunt. That being said, I don't use wake-up taunts on everyone, and I don't have any intention to use it on Phoenix, because why the heck would we? Why would we want them to get up when our finish is triggered from them being down? Here is an interesting opportunity, though. So, opponent down, we can set up a taunt that will lead... Yeah, actually, let's do that. That's a cool priority chain. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say 10% of the time when they're down, we want to do the 2 hands up. That's our yes motion or whatever. The reason we're doing that... Oh, wait, no, that's the both fingers up. There we go. The reason we're doing that is because hopefully, what'll happen is he'll do that taunt when they're down, and unless they're down for long enough, they will get up and interrupt what would have followed, so it won't matter. And if they are down for long enough, we can do a priority chain from both fingers up to Flight of the Phoenix. So what theoretically will happen is they'll be down, and he'll either taunt, and then they'll get up and interrupt him, or he'll taunt, and then he'll go to the top and hit the Flight of the Phoenix, which is super cool. That would, for me, that's like one of those spots where when it happens, you're like, yes, this is why we do logic. Okay. Opponent dazed here, we could... Yeah, opponent dazed, I'm going to do snapping fingers since a lot of our big strikes are right before, or are taking place when the opponent is dazed. I think that's great. For the opponent outside the ring here, Adjusting our tights for maybe 10% of the time is fine. Once again, we can also use the adjust heights taunt as a chain to certain moves to keep us from necessarily having to cover after them, and also to just add a little variety to the match. It's always really cool when you see somebody hit like a big move, and then instead of like getting up and going for the cover, they stand up and they have to fix their tights because, you know, their tights came undone or whatever. Go ahead, Goth, what you got?
Well, I mean, actually, it's funny, like, the thing of fixing tights, because how many spots in the past have you seen where, like, wrestlers, like, either their gear gets, like, nagged and there's holes in it, or there's, like, a spot where the face pulls down the tights of the heel to, like, show their rear end and stuff like that.
No, exactly. And I mean, that's what's great, is that those things, when you do them right, adjusting the tights, adjusting the wrists, snapping the fingers, when you priority chain those things right in a match, it actually just looks like a real match. Like, I can't count the number. AJ is a great example. AJ fixes his tights 3 times a match, I swear, if you really watch. But it always comes at the right time.
The TLC match, like, it doesn't matter if you fix his tights because he had a giant hole.
Yeah, there is that. Okay, so one thing I do want to point out while we're here, though, is opponent on post is actually a mistranslation. This is when you're on the turnbuckle. So whatever taunt you set here, set it to 100. And the reason for that is, one of the coolest things you'll ever see in this game is when somebody jumps onto the top turnbuckle, does a taunt, and then hits their finish. That is a cool spot. The problem is that even at 100%, it doesn't trigger all the time, and I'm not sure why that is. But essentially, this is actually when you're on the turnbuckle, not when your opponent is on the turnbuckle, so definitely set that to 100%. Okay, and now we're to my favorite part, priorities. Priorities are very, very interesting. There are some gotchas to this that you should really pay attention to. I'm going to set everything to 0 for right now. The first thing we do when we get to priorities, we go to the end of our move list, the very, very bottom, and we start looking at things that should be pinned after. So, for example, if we come up here, we should absolutely pin after this powerbomb whip. Just makes sense. So we'll go for a standing at feet pin. Every time we hit that counter powerbomb whip, that is the counter off the top turnbuckle. And then we'll come back down here, start where we left off with that. Guillotine whip, that's the leg drop. We don't need to cover after... Or no, that's the drop across the ropes. We don't need to cover after that. Buckle bomb, we could cover after, but we don't have to. Like, that's a move you can hit and just enjoy the move. So I'm going to leave that and not necessarily cover.
Buckle bomb, could you not chain that to a top rope move? Or is that not possible in this game?
See, and here we go with the good ideas from Goth. This is why Goth is on the payroll, guys. We can combo that, but we're not going to do that right now because the first thing we have to cover is all of our pinfalls.
Yeah.
So layout style sunset flip. Now this is where we get interesting. Yes, I want him to cover after that, but only in the early running of the match. And I do want to check one thing here. I want to make sure that our standing at head face up pin is not the moonsault press. Face up near head. It is. Okay, so we're not going to want to follow up a layout style sunset flip with a moonsault press because all that's going to tell people is that our layout style sunset flip is so weak that we had to hit another moonsault just to pin them. And we don't want to sell that our moves are weak. We want to sell that they're strong. So we're going to go with standing at feet pin, and that'll be in small damage. If we have enough room in large damage, we can follow this up with a taunt or a tight adjustment, and it makes sense why we don't cover then. Okay, coming back down. Finding our position where we left off. This is by far one of the things that it took me the longest to understand, but you really need these priority chains for pins because otherwise just weird things will happen, and you'll see them and you'll be like, I don't know why my guy didn't cover right there. Like, a lot of these pinning changes right here come from me calling our matches and being like, and he's obviously going to go for a cover after that move, and then it doesn't happen, and I'm like, I'm super embarrassed right now. Holy moly. Whoops. Okay, give me 1 second here, guys. I think I am noticing a bit of an audio problem.
Oh?
Yeah, it's really good. My mic is peaking out a whole bunch, and if I had to guess, It's because recently I adjusted the audio because it was wrong. Problem is, it's now not wrong. What the heck? Testing. Okay, that's probably a little bit better. I'm going to go maybe here, though. That should be a little bit better. Sorry about that, guys. Hopefully the audio isn't terrible and I can fix it in post. I'm guessing that Skype did something great because Skype is awesome. Just kidding. I freaking hate Skype. Okay.
I was about to say, when we use the Skype?
I don't even use it, but it's on my computer because of I needed it for a thing a while back.
Right.
And yeah, it just wasn't good. Let's leave it at that.
I mean, put it this way, Gary is still our bloody sound tech.
There is that. Okay.
Yeah.
So dangerous DDT here. We're going to want a standing at feet pin because it's probably going to leave... Did that leave them face up or face down? Do you remember?
That could be one of those where it looks like it's about to leave them face down, but then they roll onto their back.
Okay.
Possibly.
I think that's what it does. So I'm going to leave that standing at feet pin because obviously we don't want to follow our dangerous DDT with a moonsault pin.
Yep.
Okay. So that's our dangerous DDT. That is one of our actual finishes that we want to finish the match. God, now I'm just going to spaz out about the audio. I'm sorry if the audio is terrible, guys. I really am. Okay, STO here. That's not necessarily something we pin off of Jumping Brainbuster, same thing. So far, we're actually really, really lucky with Phoenix in the regard that not all of these moves are things we need to cover after. Usually it ends up being the other way, where it's like you have to cover after a lot of moves in your moveset. Standing at feet big pin is great here. And we can do that at any damage, because we really shouldn't see the Senton Atomico early, but I'm going to set it to 100% at any damage just in case something crazy happens with the logic, because I always want them to pin after my finish. Like, that's something that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so Appeal Diving Elbow has a pinfall with it. Sledgehammer does not, Diving Elbow does not. You basically want a pinfall after all of your diving moves. If you don't want somebody to win with them, though, you can do that pinfall in small damage and then do a taunt or something in large damage. However, given the nature of, like, the Sledgehammer, I'm reasonably sure, because of when it fires, that we can pin after it every time and it won't be a problem. For that Diving Elbow, it's a little bit different. For that one, we're going to see that late in the match. At the same time, though, I'm kind of okay with them pinning, or with Phoenix pinning off of that, because it just looks good to pin off of that. So let's go standing at feet, big again. You'll note I'm using the standing at head one pretty sparingly, like we haven't used it at all here, and that's because it's a moonsault, so like, really, it's great in a regular match flow, like in the middle of the match. It's not great for us to priority chain into, though. Okay, so that's our Diving Elbow. The Appeal Diving Elbow Drop does have a pinfall included. However, if you want to be thorough, you should take into account the fact that you can land that on their back and it won't pin. So we're going to go ahead and add that as well. You'll notice we're running out of slots here real quick. The fortunate thing is we don't have that much left that we should realistically pin after. This original Frankensteiner is one that could be pinned after, but we actually got rid of the pinfall on that so that we wouldn't have to pin after it, so I think I'm going to leave it. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slots left, and those 5 slots we're going to use for cool stuff like what Goth mentioned earlier, which is that Buckle Bomb into our finish. Where are you, Mr. Buckle Bomb? God, that makes me want to set the Buckle Bomb higher now. That's just super cool. One of the things that I do quite commonly is I'll chain a big grapple to a wake-up taunt to a finish, but that's only if you're on PC and you have the wake-up taunt mod. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get much mileage out of that. Okay, Buckle Bomb here, and we're going to follow that up with... Ooh, and I'm so tempted to be like, no, we really shouldn't follow that up with the Flight of the Phoenix, but I mean, come on, guys, come on. How cool is that? Buckle Bomb into the finish. I love it. We're going to go for that. Okay, so we're also going to go for... This is one that we sort of planned out earlier. We're going to go for this, which is our taunt on the top rope. And we'll go straight into the Flight of the Phoenix, which is post big small. There we go. Okay. So now we can do some more fun ones. These are just sort of like taunts into things, which is always kind of fun. I'm gonna actually take a second to go back and look at our performance. So when the opponent is down, we do both fingers up. That's right, we wanted to potentially chain that into the... So as you'll see, a lot of these are just things that are chaining into our finish. Okay, there we go. Both fingers up, and then jump on post small medium. I'm so trying to focus on this, guys, but I'm like, in my head, because this is the kind of spaz I am, I'm like, the audio is screwed. You did everything wrong. You are a terrible YouTuber. Which, you know, mileage may vary. Maybe you feel the same way. But honestly, one thing I love about the Fire Pro community is that everybody's actually super, super supportive, and I appreciate that. Okay, so things that we can do here that might be interesting. Well, for one, we can take our Flying Lariat, which is our big running signature, and we can chain a taunt after that, so that we don't necessarily have to pin, or we could do a pin early on and then a taunt afterwards later, which isn't terrible. I think what we'll do is early on in the match, we will follow that Flying Lariat with our sparsely used Moonsault pin, because that's just kind of a cool combo. Standing at head big, or no, whoops, not big, pin. Did I mess up? I messed up on a couple of these. Standing at feet pin. Standing at feet pin. That's just me being a spaz, don't mind me, guys. And then what we can also do then is say, okay, that's fine, but when we're in high damage with the Flying Lariat, we want it followed with something but not a pinfall. So what we're going to do is we're going to go with one of our taunts, and I have to remember which one now, so I'm going to go check on the move list real quick. Let's go with probably Adjust Heights. That's actually a great one for us to adjust heights after. And I didn't look at the slot because I'm bad at life. Don't mind me, guys. Adjust Heights is number 3. I wish they would actually show you the taunts over here instead of just performance number 3. But that's okay. Some of the interface things in Fire Pro could be better. Okay, so now we get into interesting stuff. Showmanship right here is the likelihood. It says it affects the likelihood of throwing the opponent into the corner and out of the ring, and for once, the text is actually correct. What this is whenever your character rolls a Irish Whip roll, it'll then roll another 100-sided dice, and if the percentage it gets is lower than the lower or equal to the percentage you set here, that Irish Whip will be into the corner or out of the ring instead of... off the ropes. 70% here is probably a little bit high. I think maybe 50% is a little better for Phoenix. Okay, discretion. This is how often your edit will stop to breathe when they need to. So if you're trying to make like a hyper-aggressive face, then you can set discretion to like 0, and you will just go. You will go until you have no stamina left and you collapse. If you're trying to pace out a really grindy heel, then you set it to 100, because every chance he can, he wants to breathe. For the case of Phoenix, I think the 30% that it was at initially is probably fine. Flexibility affects the likelihood the wrestler will take the opponent's style into consideration. Actually, this affects one thing: always set it to 100%. That's all I'm going to say. There are several fight styles in the game that are MMA based, and if you try to Irish Whip them, they just shake it off. This basically tells your edit, if they fight somebody that has that fight style, don't even try to Irish Whip because it just looks weird. So that's why we set that to 100 on everyone. Cooperation is how often they'll use tag team moves. In this case, because he's not part of a regular tag team, we'll set that to like 20%. Even if they're part of a regular tag team, like I said, this is the percentage that controls how much you can prevent tag team moves from spamming. Outside return count, this is a very important one. On heels, you're going to want to set it high, but you probably shouldn't exceed 40% even on a heel. On a face, you probably don't want to exceed 20. Faces generally don't like to sit outside and fight. However, Phoenix does, so we'll maybe bring him up to 30, actually. Touch work is how likely they are to tag in and out. I generally keep this high because I feel like fast tags make for better tag team matches. Weapons are very, very interesting. If you set this too high, your matches will never end because instead of pinning, they will beat people with weapons. I have gotten hour-long matches even longer by having this set to like 50%. You really never want to go over 20. 20 is pretty good for heals. For a face that likes to use weapons, I'm going to go 10. And then second interference is how much they will interfere if they're a manager. For a face, you really don't want this to be much. You want it to be maybe 10%. For a heal, much, much higher. Okay, so that is our logic set for Phoenix. And how long has this been? Only an hour. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know your time is very valuable, and an hour is a long time. However, I kind of want to see how our logic works, and you guys should too.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do here real quick is put together a match just to test our logic and see how that pans out. Of course, first, we do need to move Phoenix to a roster. So let's go edit mode. Team edit, I think is what it is. Yeah, transfer wrestler.
Yes, it is.
Some of the interface of Fire Pro and I do not necessarily get along great. Did we already put him in GFW?
I have no idea.
Because he's not showing up. Okay, that's interesting. Is he in Legend? Yeah, he is. Okay, he's already in GFW. Okay. Cool. I just wanted to make sure he wasn't on the retired list, because if they're on the retired list, you can't actually select them during matches. Okay, so we'll do a normal match. This is absolutely key, by the way. When you're doing your match or your logic and stuff, you should always run a test match just to see how it goes. Now, I do want you to know we haven't done his parameters, so his damage numbers might be a little bit off, and that's fine. Yeah, why not? I love Raven. We'll watch Raven. That's my favorite Raven, though, so we're gonna go with that. Okay. Do it, guys. Do it. We'll probably skip intros here because that's not super important for what we're doing.
Yeah.
I just want to see how his logic sort of flows out in the match real quick. So you guys are also getting a surprise match. Hey!
Yeah.
Goes for that kick early, which is fine.
Look up. Up. And the moonsault.
Hey man, faces, they be pinning quick.
Yeah, yeah. Off the ropes. Oh no, but they run into each other. Oh, suplex. Nice.
See, that felt a little early for that suplex to me, but...
No, not necessarily. And there he goes. He started throwing people out the ring.
Phoenix is like, yo, I got this. We're going to take this outside now.
Goes to the back there, unfortunately gets it out to the face, and then a body slam.
Oh my gosh, I know what's going on. Okay, hold on, guys. This test is not accurate for a reason. There is a mod called match pacing that we use quite a bit for GFW to help with the length of matches. And basically what it does is it sets the starting damage range, and we just started at higher damage there than we intended to.
Ah.
So I'm going to set that back to long, and we're going to watch a test match. Obviously, if you think you got what you need from this video, you don't need to keep watching this, but what I'm going to do with this is basically watch and point out things that I want to change in the logic based on what we see. So if that's a process that you're interested in, this is a good chance to see that.
Okay.
There we go. Now we're getting a little bit more of a quick exchange here early without so many downs. I mean, so far that's looking good. I'm not seeing anything that sticks out as really
I mean,
bad.
so like a drop toe hold or a strike for them to go down is not too bad.
Yeah, it's more just you don't want to see rapid downs. You don't want to see down, get up, down, get up, down, get up, down, get up. See, those hammer blows are leading right into more action. Off the ropes we go. Oh, big elbow.
Oh, nice.
So far, holding his own with Raven.
Yeah.
Mind you, his current point total is only like 132.
Yeah.
And I think Raven's is like 200 and something.
Nah. But it didn't seem to matter because also we remember at Blackout, Panda got an impressive win over Raven.
He did indeed. Oh, collision at the ropes.
Oh.
That's something you can't logic out, guys. That collision at the ropes just happens, and there's nothing we can do about it unless Spike Chunsoft decides to fix it. Oh! See, that was good.
Oh, nice!
And that happened when we wanted. It may have only been a 1 count, but it was a nice high-flying move from a big man at the right time.
Yep. Dragging him towards the center of the ring.
And a Gato clutch.
Oh, nice. One.
Big kick out there. But we are seeing that the face is being active and going for quick pinfalls here, which is what we want.
Exchange here.
Phoenix getting the better of that exchange.
Yeah.
Raven getting the better of that pickup.
Yeah.
One of those nice hammer blows. Oh, I forgot to swap the toe kick B in too, but we can do that later.
Yeah.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Nice.
That actually looks really good.
Yeah.
Fighting out of that grapple from Raven.
Moonsault press. 1, 2. Nope.
Being very aggressive with those pinfalls. Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, nice counter. Oh, wow.
Okay, he should have probably pinned after that.
Yeah.
That felt bad to me. I think I'm gonna add a pin priority for that Frankensteiner. See, and that's what I mean, guys. In fact, in that case, I might just switch that Frankensteiner to the Frankensteiner with the built-in pin so I can save a priority slot and just set it to a low percentage at high damage. Oh, Raven just working him over with those knees, though. And now Raven gonna pull him over to this corner. What's he got in mind here? We gonna see a Raven? Nope. Nope.
No.
Oh, jumping. Yeah. Oh, dangerous DDT. Done. Ashfall DDT cover.
Wow.
1, 2.
2.
Nope.
No.
Kicks out. Nice cover, though. Nice tight cover there at 2.9. There we see those elbows to set up the groggy, and he goes behind, which is what we want to see.
Several knee shots.
Yeah, Raven, again with that brutal see, I feel like Raven's spamming here. I would probably slightly adjust the logic there.
Yeah.
Big series of elbows here, and gonna go behind again because that's what we expect. And a backdrop.
Nice.
I think maybe we want to see more striking.
Oh, sleeper!
When I think when they're groggy, we might want to see a little more striking from him, though, because we saw him go for the back twice in a row, and it just... Big Frankensteiner. Is he going to cover here, though? Nope, going to pick him up.
No.
Yeah, we need a cover after that Frankensteiner. It just looks weird. Nice spinning punch there.
Yep.
Gonna just catch his breath while he naps under the ropes.
Yeah. Oh, nice running bulldog.
Oh, Phoenix is groggy now. Getting worn down here by Raven. Oh. But see, that was good. We've seen one low blow in this match so far.
Yeah. No, of course.
Oh, Raven effect.
Oh, Raven effect DD.
This is probably gonna be it. If Raven is up in time, both men down.
Oh, no.
Whipped off the ropes. What's he got in mind? Oh, ducks under. Fighting his way out is Phoenix. Big knee drop there. One of the things I'm really looking for here with Phoenix is so far we haven't actually seen the top rope finish, and that's what I want to see.
Oh, nice drop toe hold.
Those top rope finishes are very important.
Going.
Oh.
Okay, 1, 2.
Nope.
Oh no!
See, the other thing about doing logic the way that I do it is I knew when he hit that wasn't going to be a pinfall. There is one instance that could have pinned him. If that move did enough damage to roll him over from large to critical, it could have pinned him, but in most cases it will not. Which does leave a measure of unpredictability. But if you're doing commentary or whatever, you want to sell every one of those pinfalls like they're the end of the day.
Oh god, yeah.
Okay. Side knee lift here, softening Raven up a little bit, but I don't think he's got much of a fall. Oof. That bulldog is vicious.
Running bulldog.
Phoenix the first one
Phoenix
up, though.
Phoenix gets up first, though.
See, Raven was down in the corner there. I really would have liked to see the flight of the Phoenix there, but maybe he's not in crit yet. He's probably not in crit yet, actually.
No.
Yeah, he's going behind way too frequently on those groggies for me.
I would even say he goes for the ropes a bit too much, personally.
For the Irish whips or for the just running moves?
The Irish whips.
Okay, we can dial those back. And I should be taking notes. Essentially, this is what you want to do. When you're done, run a match, take some notes on the edit and how they perform. Oh, Raven effect. Will he be up in time to cover?
Flow DDT.
He gets...
here we go. One,
two. No!
No!
And that's the Ukemi coming into effect right there. That was the spirit allowing Phoenix to kick out. Oh, big kick to the face.
Oh, no.
Both men down here. Oh, counters the running bulldog.
Yeah.
I thought we were getting another one right there for sure.
Yeah.
That enziguri was nice.
BC here.
I really want to see the jumping brainbuster here lead into the flight.
Body slam.
Or even the buckle bomb would be nice. Gosh, I wish I could, like, make him whip into the
buckle
corner.
bombs are like a particular set.
See, well-used taunts right there, folks.
Yeah. Actually, saying that now, you were saying he was, like, spamming the knee. I don't think he actually was, like, thinking the rest of this match. Ouch! That must have hurt.
Oh, STO puts him down quick.
Nice.
Come on, send him to the corner. Show me the buckle. Oh, that's not what we wanted. That's probably it right there.
Yeah.
One, two. Nope, kicks out.
No!
That was pretty good. That was a pretty good survival. Oh, throws him out the ring.
Very resilient.
Yes, fly, baby, fly. Give me that spot.
Here we go.
Oh! I love the dives. The dives are like my favorite spots in this game. Oh, full Nelson Buster on the outside. You can see the discretion kicking in there as he stops to breathe. Oh!
Freaking hell. On the outside.
Willing to put the work in.
He's not going to get cover. Ow! God, oh my God.
Putting all the work in on the outside.
Uh-oh.
Raven got a chair.
Oh, no. Unfortunately, couldn't get a hit in there.
Nope, not able to capitalize. Thrown into the ring. Oh, I thought Raven would go back for one of the chairs, but no.
Yeah.
Whipping him off the ropes here, ducks under, and collision at the ropes. God, I hate that.
But it's a double down, which looks a bit better than just them bouncing off each other.
Pro tip, when that happens, if you're commentating, you sell it as both wrestlers being so exhausted they just collapsed. Because there's no other way to explain that.
Raven effect DDT.
But he's down for too long.
This finisher is not protected anymore.
One, two. There it is.
Three.
Gets him there.
Go.
Okay, but that was a good match. We saw a couple things. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you. So yeah. I mean, I can't wait to see the evaluation on this match as well. So Raven just holding it in there.
We got a lot of 2.92% match. That's what you want to see.
Bad.
That's what you want to see. If you got a 92% match, I use the mod pack, which also gives me a star rating. The star rating system is actually much stricter than the match evaluation system. So for me, this is more important. The fact that that was a 4-star match says everything that needs to be said. The reason
unfortunately we can't break the Meltzer system, I don't think, on this mod.
No, we can't. But the fact that that match was 4 stars resulted from the way that the Ukemi worked out, and we saw that some of those extreme kickouts. It also was just well paced, and that builds up a lot when you hit signatures. It builds up a lot when you get 2.9 counts. So overall, if you're pulling in good match evaluations like that, and you looked at the match and thought it was good, you're probably okay. Don't just base your opinion of how well the logic came out on the match evaluations, though, because quite frequently the match evaluations are just not as accurate as you going, well, he did spam that move 6 times or whatever. So we do know what we want to change with Phoenix. I'm going to make those adjustments off the video, though, because we are at length and probably ready to go here. I hope you guys enjoyed our tutorial of Edit Creation 103. 103. It is 103 this time.
Yes, it is.
The next one we do will probably be just focused on the skills and parameters section, so I can explain some logic that goes into that. Because realistically, parameters is one of those tricky things to tune, because like if you've got an edit that uses nothing but elbows and that's their thing, logically you're like, yo, I'll just give them a good score in elbows, and then they just run through people like garbage, because when your entire moveset is high damage, you have a problem. So we'll tune our parameters in the next episode, and we'll also talk about defense styles, attack styles, and the special skills.
Yeah.
So Goth, thank you as always for joining me for this video.
No problem. I'm always happy to be here.
And thank all of you at home for joining us, and hopefully you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, go ahead and leave a comment if you would like to see something else in tutorial form, because as I was doing the logic, it occurred to me that this is a very specific style of wrestler, and the logic is very geared towards his style. If you want to see some different tutorial videos on logic for different kinds of wrestlers, let me know what you're looking for in the comments, and maybe we can accommodate you. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye! God, say bye.
Oh, so sorry. Bye!
I'm gonna fight and
Let's get good. Welcome back to GFW Academy. This is... Fuck.
Part 3.
Yes. All right, let's do that again.